Glad to be here today. We're going to call this meeting of the Senate Agriculture and Consumer Affairs Committee meeting to order. I would like to start off with Senator Lee Anderson. Would you start us off with a prayer? Well, I'll tell you what. All right, let's try. How about Senator Max Burns? All righty.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Five.
Thank
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If you would, please join us in prayer. Father God, we're grateful. We're grateful for today. We're grateful for life and breath and the opportunity to live and work and serve the people of Georgia. We appreciate agriculture and what it contributes to our state, to the families that are involved. And if you would, please, Lord, bless them. Be with my friend Randy Dixon's family today, who died tragically in a farm accident on Friday. Bless us now as we do the work of this committee and do it for the best of all the people of Georgia. In Christ's name I pray. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Senator. All righty. The first bill on the docket is my dear friend from South Georgia. I believe you have House Bill 53, Chairman John Corbett. Tell us what you're bringing to us today. Mike, too. All right, there you go, Mr. Chairman.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Glad to be here this afternoon in front of this esteemed committee. I have House Bill 53, LC 442677S. This should be the bill in front of you today. Is that what everybody has? Mr. Chairman, what we're doing with this bill is simply we're moving the Board of Registrations for Foresters from the Secretary of State's office to the Forestry Commission. I've got a letter from the Director of the Forestry Commission in support of this. His only concern or request was it's going to cost about $90,000 a year to do this. In the bill, we've got that covered. There's presently about between 900 and 1,000 registered foresters in the state today. In the bill, it sets their fee, a yearly buying fee at $200 for the 2 years. So multiply that times 900 to 1,000, you've got anywhere from $180,000 to $200,000. It covers that $90,000 a year expense that it would cost to administratively attach this to the Forestry Commission. Senator Larry Walker is here today. He had a study committee over the summer on occupational licenses, and this is one of the recommendations from that study committee was to move the Board of Registration of Foresters from the Secretary of State to the Forestry Commission. That came out of that committee, and the constituents of the state would be better served by doing this. You know, the Forestry Commission, they have a location in every county in the state. They've got a relationship with the people. They know the area. And in many cases, the Secretary of State's office had to call in the Forestry Commission anyway when there's an issue with forestry theft, because the Forestry Commission has an investigative unit, so it's going to make government more efficient. And that's all we're doing with this, Mr. Chairman. I'd stand for any questions if there are any.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Do we have any questions from?
Just one. Thank you, Chairman. Hey, I don't know who's working there.
There you go.
Working there.
What was the fee? $200. Just curious, what was the registration fee?
I want to think it was, and I've got some help behind me here. They could probably tell me. I think it was maybe $90 a year.
They knew it was going up to cover their.
And they agreed to do this.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Senator Burns, number 5.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Chairman Corbett, for bringing the legislation. I support the legislation. We seem to be in a mode where we're removing certain responsibilities from the Secretary of State and putting them in a more appropriate location. Can you share with the committee the process that has been in place as far as how timely these responsibilities were conducted? Is that a part of the reason for moving it?
Well, it just makes it more efficient by doing this. I can't speak to the issues that went on in the Professional Licenses Board. That's what you're seeing in other areas, and we've got a state agency that it's just a better fit. to move them here to do this. But they have been issues with the Professional Licenses Board and getting licensed in a timely manner. They have, yes, sir.
Thank you.
All right, do we have any other questions from members of the committee? Senator Watson, number 3.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The $200, does that go to the board or to the general fund?
It will go to the general fund, and we'll have to appropriate it.
Okay,
Yes, sir.
thank you.
All righty. Any other questions? Senator, what number are you?
12.
Number 12. Here we go.
Mr. Chairman, I'm assuming this bill passes out of committee and it has a favorable chance to pass in the Senate. I'm going to recommend we add the $90,000 to the Forestry Commission's budget to handle this. So we'll be meeting on that tomorrow
Thank you.
in the next few days. But that is something we'll have to add.
Yes, that is correct.
And I suppose we could take it out somewhere else. But anyway, we'll figure that out
Good deal.
in an appropriate time.
All righty. Do we have any other questions from any other senators? All righty. I believe it's the appropriate time.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to pass House Bill 53, LC 442677S.
All righty. Do we have a second? We have a second. Senator Jackson. Do we have any further discussion? All right. Everyone in favor of the bill, please raise your hand. All righty. Anyone opposed? Motion passes unanimous.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members
Thank
of
you, Mr.
committee.
Chairman.
I'll be proud to have you carry this in the Senate if you.
Be glad to, Chairman.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. All righty. Turn that one off. Now, on to Representative Leverett, House Bill 1223.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I appreciate the opportunity to present House Bill 1223 to you and appreciate your placing it on the agenda this afternoon also, Mr. Chairman. Thank you so much for that. So this is a bill that has sort of arisen from a local issue that has been in my district for quite some time now. And I want to thank, in addition to thanking the committee for their attention today, and again, thanking you, Mr. Chairman, I want to thank Commissioner Tyler Harper and his staff, Catherine Russell, Patrick Guthrie, and others that I have sort of worn out my welcome with over the last few days working on this legislation. I just appreciate their time so much and the input they've made on it. So this has to do with soil amendments, and I'm sure members of the committee are probably familiar with that program. To my knowledge, it's been around about 50 years. There is a Soil Amendment Act of 1976, which the department administers, and that act provides for registration and licensing and just general regulation of soil amendments. And they're defined in the act as any substance intended to change characteristics of soil for purposes of, for example, allowing water to penetrate, making water be retained, to reduce soil compaction, or just anything that enhances the physical properties of soil. It's distinguished from fertilizers and liming agents and that sort of thing in that the term doesn't include things which make nutritional claims. So it doesn't include commercial fertilizers or liming materials, and it doesn't include, and this is the word from the statute, unmanipulated vegetable or animal manures. So I would assume it doesn't include things like chicken litter and that sort of stuff. The commissioner administers the act, and I would say the program is just generally a huge success story. And so that the members of the committee know, I'm a big fan of the program. I've had occasion to learn a little about it in my district, and I think it was just a really well-conceived, well-administered program. You're taking what is generally, most of the time, a waste product from the end of an agricultural process, and you're putting it back at the beginning of the process into purposeful use. And soil amendments also provide low-cost alternatives to some other much more expensive things that are out there now. So, and when you consider all the soil amendments that are currently distributed through our state, you don't really hear about a lot of complaints from a statistical perspective. But there are problems from time to time, and they usually involve either misapplication of the soil amendment, either because the wrong thing was put out or the right thing was applied but in the wrong way. For example, like excessive rates of application. And so and some of those incidents have happened in my district. And in an area that I share with Senator Anderson, I believe it's also happened some in Senator Burns' district, and in a lot of my co-sponsors, Representative Prince and Mac Jackson, and in Glasscock County, which is not Representative Jesse Petrie's district, but it is his ancestral home, and he still has some property out there and some relatives that he hears from time to time. So I was pleased to have them co-sponsor with me. And sometimes the problems can be severe, as can the response of the neighbors, because that can adversely impact the life of folks in our rural communities. And so I'm concerned for that. I mean, I'm concerned for the constituents, but I'm also concerned because these incidents, I think, hurt the program. They lead folks to call for curtailment or elimination of the program, and I think that would be devastating for agriculture. And it'd be terrible for our state citizens because we all depend upon a healthy agricultural industry. So I've approached the topic with a desire to curb abuses that would preserve the longevity and viability of the program, but won't unduly interfere with the vast majority of folks who are doing it right out there. So toward that end, I solicited the assistance of the department to craft a surgical and limited provision that would curtail a limited class of what I view to be some of the excessive abuses. So I got a lot of input and guidance from the department. I took comment from the Dairy Association. I've talked to Farm Bureau. I've tried to craft a very limited rule. And I feel like this will, again, address a very limited category of abuses but it's extremely narrowly drafted. So the bill, if you look at it, it's only 2 pages. It basically adds to a list of existing violations that are in code. It makes it a violation to apply or distribute a soil amendment on a tract of land, but you've got to meet 3 pretty narrow exceptions. First, the owner of the property or the operator who's applying the soil amendment has to be subject to a consent order or some kind of a pending enforcement action or investigation by the Agriculture Department or by EPD, because sometimes when the soil amendments are applied in the wrong way or where the wrong thing is applied, EPD has jurisdiction. And these primarily include things like contamination of surface water, contamination of groundwater, or soil contamination. Second, the consent order or enforcement action or ongoing investigation has to still be active. It can't have been withdrawn or resolved. It's not like if you get a problem, you're forever barred. You can work on it and fix it, and then you can be back in business. And then third, a notice of violation has to be issued by EPD or the department, some kind of violation. And then fourth, the Ag Department has notified the owner and the person who is operating and applying a soil amendment on that site that application must cease. So you've got to have these predicate things happen, and then there has to be notice to the owner or the operator. And we also do provide that site means whatever you've identified in your nutrient management plan or a portion thereof. And in some circumstances, the department would have jurisdiction to apply the prohibition temporarily to that particular site and something that was basically close to it and operationally connected to it. So there's got to be some kind of rational basis for going beyond the site, and that the department would sort of have to do that in its discretion, but subject to these limitations in the statute. So again, this is extremely narrow. It's intended to catch just some of the bad actors that are out there, some of which I believe operate occasionally within our district out our side of East Georgia. And it's hopeful that this would, with the commissioner's assistance and his enforcement, will help curtail some of these abuses so you don't have all these complaints coming in, and the sort of the viability of the program itself will be fostered and continued, because we need it. I mean, it's just essential to so many aspects. So that's basically the bill, Mr. Chairman. I'd be glad to stand for any questions.
Well, thank you. Would you mind speaking to some of the changes that were made in the original bill that came out of the House, and then the changes that have been made in this substitute that you have here?
Yes, certainly. Let me get my different drafts. So the version that came out of the House was a similar structure, and it basically had the same requirements, but we just referred to, first of all, we used the term distribute because that was a word that was in code, and that actually was an error because the word distribute doesn't refer to the actual application of a soil amendment on a site. It doesn't refer to putting it on the ground. It just refers to selling it, putting it in commerce. So in this one, we've said apply or distribute it on a site. We also added on a separate site that has geographic proximity to an operational nexus with the underlying site, and that's some language that I worked with the department on. So it would limit the department's ability to go beyond the actual place where the violation occurs, only if there's some kind of connection where there's a reason to do that because you're worried about runoff or something of that nature. And it's got to be close by. It can't be like a mile down the road. Secondly, I added some language. In A there, we added the phrase at the end that said the enforcement action or ongoing investigation has not been withdrawn or resolved to the satisfaction of the issuing agency. Again, to make it clear that it's still got to be active. There's got to be an active problem there. It's not like if you had a problem months ago that you fixed, you get punished by not being able to spread soil amendments for a time. There's still got to be an ongoing problem that needs to be addressed that would justify stopping you from spreading the soil amendments or continuing to spread them until that issue is resolved. The second part was pretty much the same. We had some language in there about regarding contamination surface water, but we moved that up into the first part. And then the third item is notice, and we just made it clear that the notice has to be that, these things have happened and that you're prohibited from continuing to spread soil amendments on this particular site. So to make it clear what the notice had to contain. And then we also, I think, just recently in this sub, we added the language that says the site is the site identified in a nutrient management plan submitted to the department or a portion of the site. And also, I think I mentioned at the top, we did add the concept of being a separate site, provided it's got that connection to the one where the violation is found. So that I think would kind of go through the changes. We went through a number of changes, but it kind of settled out where it was just a couple of phrases that we changed.
So, Representative Leverett, is it not true to say that this committee sub gives the Department of Agriculture more discretion in terms of if there is a violation, how they can handle that?
I would agree, Mr. Chairman. I think it does. But it does give them, I think, some guidance to limit it, so because I know there was a concern that this might be too expansive. So we've tried to limit it, and the commissioner helped us with coming up with that language to make it reasonable and also something he could enforce.
Good deal. Do we have any questions from members of the committee? Yes, sir. Senator Burns, number 5.
Thank you. I appreciate the author. I appreciate his diligence on this. We've been working on this for a couple of years now, and he is correct. Senator Anderson has some issues in his district. I have some issues in my district, and certainly Representative Leverett has issues in his district. I believe that what you have here is a good, solid, reasonable approach toward addressing potential problems. And I'd just like to say that our objective is that there'd be no violations. We'd like to see no violations in the application of soil amendments, and therefore there would be no need to have the commissioner step in and issue any restrictions. But I do appreciate the amendments. I do appreciate the work with the department, and I look forward to supporting the bill.
Thank you so much. And I think you raise a good point in that I think partly due to Commissioner Harper's work here, we don't hear about a lot of violations. I mean, I think the idea is to give people the guidance and the instructions so they don't commit violations, and you just don't hear about a lot. But when you hear about them, you really hear about them.
Indeed.
All right. Senator Anderson.
Thank you, Representative, for bringing the bill forward. This question may be more for the commissioner. In this bill, we do not have no fines attached to it. Commissioner, do we have any fines attached to anybody that if we shut someone down?
So, to answer your question, Mr. Chairman, I guess it's okay if I address the committee.
Please,
Okay.
please. State your name.
Proper protocol. My name's Tyler Harper. And it's an honor to be before the committee. Actually, be with the committee that I was once a member of. So, but to your question, Mr. Chairman, the department does have discretion to not only levy administrative penalties, but we also have authority to go even beyond that, depending upon the I would say the severity of the violation. So, does that answer your question? Okay.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Fisher, is it not true that if you issue an order to cease the application of a soil amendment, that in and of itself is a constraint, a restriction, a penalty?
It would be, as long as we have, within the confines of the particular provision where that may take place, as long as we as the agency or the department have the authority to issue that order.
Yes.
And if that was violated, it would be a violation, yes.
Correct. But you have the discretion to go beyond just the cease,
Ye-
desist.
So if there was a violation, yeah, we have discretion to go beyond that. Yes, we can administer penalties, both civil and in some cases, dependent upon the severity of the case, it could even be criminal, depending upon how it works, because of the authority that we already are given under current law.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Commissioner. Senator Hatchett, what are you? Number one. Okay.
I was, and I've talked to the commissioner about this a little bit, and there's some concerns in my neck of the woods with some guys that do soil amendments with chicken manure. I mean, we've got a big poultry industry up in northeast Georgia. A couple things, and I know you tried to narrowly tailor this, but geographic proximity and operational nexus, it just sounds a little vague to me, and I'm wondering what you're trying to capture there. Are you trying to make it where it has to be contiguous land and a part of the operation of the underlying site, or?
Well, it wouldn't necessarily have to be contiguous, because I know there's some concern that the word site, it could be just a part of a field, and you may have another site next to it. And so we're trying to allow for that, but allow the department to deal with the particular circumstances that they find, because I don't think you can anticipate everything. So we're trying to put a limit to make it clear that if you're going to do something over here because of something that's happened here, it's got to be close enough to justify it, and there has to be some reason. It's got to be part of one operation, or there has to be some connection between the two. For example, if you're applying excessively right here in the rain, if you've got a separate field, it may be separated by some area, but if it's downgrade from it, you may still have a problem there as well that would justify stopping the application of soil amendments there too. So we didn't put any specific distance or length because I think it's difficult to anticipate everything. But we tried to put language that would limit the ability to do this beyond circumstances where it was reasonable. So you're correct. I mean, the language is not specific, but it's intended to be protective of the person who's operating.
If I can follow up with one more. Mm-hmm. With the operational nexus, the nexus part is what I think may be a little bit vague, because you could technically argue that spreading manure, if two different people are spreading manure, that's an operational nexus, even though they may be two separate outfits. Would,
Well, I think you could argue that. I would think you might lose if that was your
but that's not
argument.
the intent, at
Yeah,
least.
no. And let me say, too, to your point, I think the term is unmanipulated manures aren't even soil amendments, so this wouldn't apply to that. I mean, I don't think this applies to litter. It doesn't apply to, regular manures. None of that is considered a soil amendment. This is something that's registered, licensed as a soil amendment, and then is applied as a soil amendment.
Okay.
So I think that might address some of the concern you're expressing. And to the extent your concern is about the language being vague, I agree. It's not exact and precise, but that to me is as much of a protection for the operator as anything else. It gives you something to argue.
Yeah.
And if I could add, Senator Hatchett, on line 38, for purposes of this paragraph, only the term site means the site identified in the nutrient management plan submitted to the department or a portion thereof. As it came out of the house, the entire site, if there was a violation, would have to automatically be shut down. And so what we're trying to do is give the department discretion, depending on what the violation is, if it's a minor violation or if it's something egregious, so that the punishment can fit what the violation is, basically.
Okay.
Thank you for the question.
Thank you.
Senator Jackson, number 10.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Hi, it's good to see you.
Hey,
Thank you
same
for
here,
bringing this. So can you speak to me in just city girl terms here, what we're talking about? I want to make sure today, I'm going to play that role. I just want to make sure I'm following, I want to make sure I'm following the logic here. So if I own 100 acres and apply soil amendments on 10 of those acres, and that's found to be in violation, and I receive a notification from the EPD that that's at risk, the remaining 80 acres that I have, can I continue to put soil amendments on those based on this bill, or are they geographically proximate and at the operational nexus, and therefore make me not able to do that? That's where I'm getting really confused.
Well, I understand. So this is there's some sort of terms of art in here, and there are a lot of systems already in place that regulate the space. So to your point, it's possible you would be prohibited from spreading on the remainder of the property if, for example, you would already have to have a nutrient management plan in place for the other acreage. So depending upon where it's located, how close it is, whether there's runoff anticipated, there could be an order that you couldn't spread until you got the situation resolved on this piece. It's also possible they would see no connection and they could let you continue operating. So again, it's going to depend, and we're trying to give the tools to the department to apply them to the particular circumstances that they find.
And then does this apply only to one owner of the land? So I'm just continuing to, I'm stuck on Senator Hatch's distribute geographical proximity. So I own this land here, I get in violation, you own the land next to me, down the stream, and I got fined, or not fined, penalized, told that I can't do this. Your land is in proximation to mine, so are you now also being banned from doing this thing? And do you know that I've been charged up land? Like, how are these working in terms of interactions between different landowners of different sites?
So and good questions. So the way I have drafted this, it would have to be common ownership. It would have to be the same owner, the same operator. And there's also a provision requiring notice to you before the prohibition would take place.
Right.
So to your question, as I intend the language to operate, as I believe it would operate, if you're another person, none of this is going to apply to you. There would have to be an independent, there may be some independent basis if there were, if someone's over applying upgrade from you, it may affect your ability to apply if it runs down onto your property. But that wouldn't be because of this bill. The bill would, as drafted, doesn't require you, the neighbor who doesn't commonly own, to stop applying soil amendments.
And then the final question I have, is there anything in this bill that is proactive in terms of preventing somebody from misusing the soil amendment program, right? Like, because the way I'm reading this, or is there anything that we would call them to have to restore? So, because the way I'm reading this is, if I get caught, then Commissioner Harper can tell me to stop, and that applies to the site. But I don't see anything that says that I have to therefore fix it for you who owns the land downstream from me. Is that, I mean, maybe that's just beyond the purview of your bill, but this feels very after the fact, after you've already destroyed the water table kind of situation.
Well, and that's to an extent that's true. I'm talking here about stopping something bad that's going on. I believe the department does have tools to try to get the bad actor to fix the thing they messed up.
Okay.
And they usually do that through the consent order process. So I haven't really addressed that here because I believe they already have that ability.
Okay. Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
Chairman Walker, number 11 or 12?
12. Mr. Chairman, and I have 2 or 3 questions if
Sure,
you
please.
don't mind. So, Representative, if you do not have a nutrient management plan and somebody was applying soil amendments on your property, you're in violation already.
That's my understanding, yes.
So that doesn't need to be spelled out here. That's already,
I did not spell it out, no, sir. But I'm certainly.
seeing nodding, people nodding. So that would be a violation already.
Yes, sir. That's my
Okay.
understanding from act we as a General Assembly made a few years ago.
And you said we're not talking about chicken litter, cow manure, we're talking about food processing waste.
Yes, sir, and other kinds of, I think there's other agricultural waste that are included as well, but the definition of soil amendment in the code excludes unmanipulated manures.
So if you had a very egregious situation where the operator was just being willfully negligent, your bill is really narrowly tailored to, they would have to stop on that site or any site in proximity. But the department would have the authority, or the EPD, to issue a cease and desist and put them, make them stop everywhere, correct?
Well, at least everywhere that was likely to be impacted by the violation on that site. I mean, for example, if there's an operator who's spreading something improperly in Elbert County somewhere on Chastain Road, and they have another site in Lincoln County, it wouldn't apply to that site. If they have a site in Elbert County a few miles away, it wouldn't apply to that. It's got to be something that would be generally close by, probably on the same tract of land that had, the department has to articulate some rational reason for that.
I guess I'm concerned in the real egregious, willfully negligent situation, why you would want to allow that operator to apply soil amendments anywhere else until they
Well, I mean, that's a fair point.
straighten out their operation and correct the problem. And I wonder if existing law would allow a total cease and desist order.
I suspect that it would in some circumstances, but I think that my assumption is the department's still going to have to show some kind of violation anywhere they want to shut you down, unless it's a matter of like licensing or where it's, you've got a soil amendment that's not licensed. You can't apply that anywhere.
Anybody could address that question with more
So
clarity.
I think that's the reason that we worked with the bill's author and with the Department of Agriculture, because as it came out of the House, it was basically, if any violation, that entire site is shut down. And so basically all we were given is a 20-pound sledgehammer. But there are instances where you could have minor violations And so that's the reason that we worked with the commissioner and with the author to have a 20-pound sledgehammer and a ball peen hammer. Depending on how, if the violation is egregious, then the department could shut down the total site versus if it's some minor violation and you've got 1,000 acres and you've got 300 acres on one side of the road and 600 acres on the other side of the road. Because we at the end of the day, our agricultural community has to have somewhere to go with this stuff, from these processing plants and things. And so I know none of us want to shut down any plants, but it gives I think we talk about judicial discretion a lot. I think it gives discretion to the Department of Agriculture.
Well, I guess somebody could go to court to get a cease and desist, but I really would like the ag commissioner to have that authority, and I don't know if this gives him that. It doesn't
I mean, it
sound like it does to me.
It would be a stretch in some cases for him to exercise that authority under here. I think he may have that authority elsewhere.
Well, he's here. I wish can.
Yeah, that's fine.
Back to testify.
Commissioner, would you mind coming up and addressing Senator Walker's question?
Ask it again, 'cause he wasn't paying attention. He wasn't paying attention.
Can you restate your question, Mr. Chairman?
Okay, so
I was conferring in the back.
the chairman used a great analogy that we want to give you the flexibility to have a 20-pound sledgehammer or a ball peen hammer. Is that how you say it? Ball peen, whatever. I want you to have, I guess a nuclear bomb if you need it. So my question is this. The way this is drafted, because there already is good existing law, which you talked about already in your opening statement, if you had somebody that was just very egregious, willfully negligent, was, really endangering the environment, the streams, the groundwater, this would not allow you, based on the 24 through 37, to shut them down. My question is, do you have that authority to shut them down totally already? I mean, do you have a cease and desist all operations authority for the person that's supplying this soil amendment?
So if a soil amendment.
EPD.
So so there's a couple of things here, and so we'll try to unpack them all, and I may ask Garrett if you want to. Okay, all right. Well, I don't have it sitting with me, so you want to come up here somewhere close? That way, I make sure I don't say something out of the way. I want to make sure I'm clear and right on this. So we do have the ability, if there is a violation of the law, we can stop that application of the soil amendment if there is a violation under current law, but only a violation of our rules and regs, right? And so if in doing so, though, there are certain fines and penalties that are already laid out in law that we can also apply depending upon what the violation was. So depending on there are certain violations that there's up to a $50,000 fine. I think it's 50, isn't that right? 1,000 per violation. Well, there's one thing I thought that was the $50,000 fine. So anyway, there are certain provisions depending upon the violation warrants certain enforcement action by the department depending upon what the violation was. It could either be an administrative order, it could be a fine, it could be a cease and desist, or if it is negligent enough, we do have criminal prosecutorial authority as well under the Soil Amendment Act. And so it depends on what level of egregious violation it is as to what determines the action that the agency will take in enforcing that measure. Does that make sense?
Yes,
At
it
all?
does. I just don't want to weaken that ability that you currently have. And I also want you to have flexibility if it's a minor violation, not to shut somebody down. I just don't want to inadvert, and I know you're not trying to weaken this.
So I will say this, if you're asking that question, I don't think this weakens our authority at the agency. What I do think this does, and what Chairman Leverett has worked on, it does give us some, at the agency, some operational capacity to work with EPD in ensuring that sites are protected, especially if EPD is working through operational issues that they may have in a particular area. Does that make sense? We don't have that capability to partner under current law to address those specific issues. And so this works toward giving the agency that ability to have those conversations, so to speak, with EPD to ensure that where we're approving plans to take place, that there also is that EPD also doesn't have particular issues in those particular areas. That's kind of way this is laid out with EPD's actions that they may have taken against a particular site because of a violation of the Clean Water Act or a violation of Georgia state law or other actions that they may have taken in that area where application of soil amendment may completely change or worsen that particular soil holding capacity or even the water table or other issues. This gives us the ability to work with EPD in that particular area. So I don't see this as weakening our ability to address issues in the under the Soil Amendment Act. I think we still have strong enforcement actions. Matter of fact, we can even enter into injunctions on particular sites if they're in violation. So we have a number of tools in our toolbox to use, and I don't think this weakens our ability to utilize any of those tools in the toolbox.
Okay, thank you.
All right, Senator Anderson, you have a question.
Commissioner, in your toolbox, do you have the capability, if someone's a bad actor, you shut them down, they got back up running, but within a year they committed another bad act? I mean, what do you have in your toolbox to be able to shut them down completely if they keep repeating bad act?
That's what I thought. So under the Soil Amendment Act, as you know, the soil amendments have to be registered with the department. And if there's an egregious violation with that particular amendment, we have the sole discretion as an agency to pull the registration for that product, which means that product could no longer be applied. Okay. So there is a tool in our toolbox to address, as I said, egregious violations. The more egregious the violation, the more egregious the action we would take in violation. And I think, since I took over the reins at the department, we've been working to strengthen the soil amendment program in a multi-faceted areas. Yeah. Thankful to the work of the legislature and y'all's help, we've been able to get some additional help at the agency to help us enforce our rules, regulations, and the statute. At the same time, as Chairman Leverett has mentioned, and I think the members of this committee know, the soil amendment program is very important to the agricultural industry in this state. So this is definitely one of those issues where we're working to address both at the same time to ensure that we can allow the program to be as successful as possible, to ensure that agriculture continues to be successful in the state of Georgia, but also protecting what needs to be protected. And I think we've done a really good job of balancing that out over the last year. And obviously, we've used those tools in our toolbox when we've needed to. And I can promise you, when we need to utilize them, we're not afraid to utilize them. And I think we've shown that as well. So we'll use the tools when the tools that need to be used should be used.
Just make sure you have lifetime tools.
Yes, sir.
Okay, do we
Good
have,
craftsman warranty, right, Mr. Chairman?
do we have any other questions from members of the committee? All right, hold on, we have, I believe we have Brian Toller signed up to speak. Yep, I think that's it.
Chairman,
There we go. You on
Thank you.
there? Okay.
thank you all. Thank you all for this. It's an excellent discussion. A discussion that is long overdue simply because, as Chairman Leverett has outlined, I'm Brian Toller. Representing Grow Green Services. They provide services for application of these soil amendment products in North Georgia. And wanted to, first off, compliment Chairman Leverett for your work, and also to you, Mr. Chairman Goodman, because I know we've talked about this a lot in the last 24, 36 hours. There's been a lot of conversation on this issue. And I think also to the commissioner and his team, both here and at the Department of Ag across the street, they should be commended for the work that they have done to implement a very difficult process to put in place the soil amendment regulations that they work under now. My understanding in a call that took place back in February with the registrants that do this type of work, that compliance is over 90%. So just again, to the comments that were made here, there's excellent compliance in this program as well. And as we work through the bill as it came out of the House, and to now, I'm familiar, a little bit familiar with the committee substitute that's been discussed. I wanted to highlight to you the booklet of materials that were passed out just a minute ago. That is material that I had put together for circulation, not knowing where we would end up at this particular point of this day. We had hoped that we were going to have just a hearing on the bill, and I know the chairman, and there's been some work done on this, so certainly respect the committee's direction if that has changed. I want to highlight just a couple of points that are in there, and I tried on the very first page of that pamphlet is some language that we had provided to Chairman Goodman, also to Chairman Leverett, the Department of Agriculture, and a handful of others that we wanted to share with the committee. So, if we had our druthers, that's the language that we've worked on that we would like. And then when you turn that page over, the second page of it is my summary of what we're trying to accomplish. So, there's legal words, and then there's Brian words. And so I really kind of want to focus on the Brian words, because I think we've touched on a lot of it here today. And Senator Jackson, you hit on a key point that I want to touch on toward the very end as well. When we look at the partnership of the Department of Agriculture and the Environmental Protection Division, I think that's a very important partnership. In years past, the Environmental Protection Division regulated this program largely. And there were some violations that were out there, and they took action. They have consent orders, and those things are in place today. Some have been rectified, some have not, in my understanding. I don't know how many of those outliers are there, but that is the case that we're dealing with now. But the Department of Agriculture has taken on the program, and it would be our goal that no matter what happens in this program, is that the Department of Agriculture would have a role throughout. We would love to see that connectivity between the regulatory agency follow through all the way. So if there were a consent order that was going to be issued, that say EPD found a problem, that they would consult with the Department of Agriculture to in fact find out that if the soil amendments were the part of the problem. EPD, that's not their background. That's the Department of Ag background. So we like that. We like to have that cooperation between those two throughout the entire process. I will also mention that for some of these actions that took place years ago that may be on a piece of property that's being used for soil amendments, that those actions took place before the soil amendment program was what it is today, before it fully formed into the success that we see before us now. And so should those situations be continued to be held and subject to the regulations that are being proposed here today in this law change, when the Department of Agriculture wasn't involved in that enforcement action. So that is something I would ask you, if there was a grandfather clause or something in this that could be approached, that was something that may be beneficial for properties that would be good for soil amendments that would otherwise might be excluded by this bill reaching the governor's desk. So with those actions, look, I want you to know that we are grateful for the work that the department has put into this and what these two chairmen have put into it in particular. Having the farm operations sectioned off by the nutrient management plan, again, something that then Senator Tyler Harper put into place to being part of Georgia law. It's an expensive program to have a nutrient management plan designed for a particular site, and it should be followed. Our livestock operators do it, and our soil amendment operators should also do it, and we fully agree with that. But so to be able to section off certain fields where there might be a problem occur, I think is an excellent action, and I commend this process. This was not part of the House bill when it came from the House, but it's something that's been generated over the past several hours, and I appreciate that very much. It's a complicated issue. And Senator Jackson, to your point, when we get into the issue of nexus, the word nexus is it is an undefined, nebulous concept. And so we had that concern as well, and I appreciate that being brought before the committee for discussion purposes. And I think everyone's tried to do their best to address it, but I think it's a bit of an unknown. Y'all are very kind. This is a group that I've proud to have worked with for numerous years. I love the fact that we are, in fact, a family. We can come together when we have differences. We can work through those and do it in a very civil manner. And y'all are always a trusted voice in that process, and I'm grateful to you for that. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I'll sit down. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Okay. For this, Mr. Toller? Or for the author? Really for the author. Chairman Leverett, would you mind coming back up?
I'll be delighted to, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Jackson, what are you, 10?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So, Chairman, the testimony today did raise this issue for me. Is the way that this bill is written currently, a person could have a consent order, an ongoing investigation with the EPD. Thank you. There's nothing here that does confine it to saying that the violation was because of soil amendments. So it's possible that someone could be under investigation for something else, but your bill would actually prohibit them from doing soil amendments, even if those two things are not related. And so can you speak to why you made that choice?
Well, because usually if EPD is involved, it often involves soil amendments because that's where you're applying something that's often liquid to the surface and it can get in water if it's not done right. But that is the intention, and I would be certainly willing to consider some language that would expressly limit that.
That's all. Thank you.
Okay. Do we have any further questions from any member of the committee? Okay. Would you like to close, Chairman?
Yes, sir. I just, again, appreciate the committee's attention to the issue. It's, I think some of your colleagues can tell you it's a big issue out in our area, and it's one that we think needs some attention, and we're trying to give the commissioner here just another tool in the toolbox, as we like to say. And to the concerns about it, are we limiting it? We may be. We may be, but I believe he's got other tools that he can use more broadly. I was just trying to craft a fairly limited sort of basis for action based on some of the problems we're seeing out in our area so that he could take action. Again, we've limited it so much it may no longer really be even applicable, but we're trying to avoid hurting any of the folks who are doing it right.
All right. Well, thank you. Thank you, Chairman. I believe Senator Anderson, you.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to House Bill 1223 LC 55029-8S Make a motion to approve.
All righty, we have a motion do pass. We have a second from Senator Burns. Do we have any further discussion?
I'd like to just offer some friendly amendments, Mr. Chairman.
Let's see,
Number one.
number one. Okay.
And, Mr. Chairman, I propose that we amend LC 550298S by adding on line 25 before the word geographic, close. So it would say close geographic proximity. And then further down on line 25, striking an operational nexus and put is operationally connected with the underlying site.
What line is it?
That's on line 25.
Line
I
25.
got it, I got it.
Operationally connected instead of operational nexus.
Would you read that full sentence in, please?
So then line 25 would now read, close geographic proximity to and is operationally connected with the underlying site. And then, Mr. Chairman, also on line 32, after the word agency, add with respect to such site. And that was something that we caught during committee where
Could you,
the violation could.
Senator, would you read that with respect to such site? Is that what you said?
With respect to such site. That would be
That'd
on
be line
line
32.
32, after the word agency, before the semicolon. And that way that the violation would have to pertain to the site itself, not just a violation by the company or the individual that could be anywhere in the state. The way it's, I believe the way it's read, or is written now, could be interpreted to apply to any land in the state of Georgia.
Okay. So I'm going to read those then, Senator. Line 25, it'll read close geographic proximity to and an operational, or is, and is, we need to change and that, and is, okay, you operationally connected with the underlying site. And then line 32, at the end of agency, we would put with respect to such site.
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Yeah, let's have to have a second first. Am I wrong about that? Don't we have to have a second? Okay, all right. We have a second from Senator Jackson.
Number 10. Can you speak? I know I seconded your amendment, but I just want to have a discussion. Can you speak, Senator Hatchett? Can you speak to the use of the term close and how you landed on that? Is close in proximity, do they not mean this? How are you distinguishing the difference between geographical proximity and close geographical proximity? How do you see those as different legal terms?
I just, obviously this is, we're trying to thread a needle here, but what we don't want to do is to open the door to allowing, I guess, a judge to interpret two tracts of lands that are obviously on separate sides or different sides of the state or different sides of a county. I think adding the word close would just further, cement the intent of the author and the legislative intent that we are trying to make sure that it is close. So that's why I added the word
Okay,
close.
hold on. We have two people wanting to speak here. Who?
I want to address the close.
Senator Burns, what number, you 5?
I just want to address close. I understand the intent. Would you say within 1 mile is close?
Well, that's,
Or within a half mile is close? Or within 5 miles is close? What's close?
it is. It is undefined, but then,
Well, then
maybe
100
lost.
miles is close. Or 1,000 miles is close.
But is it close
I mean, the moon is
geographic
not
proximity?
close, maybe, but it could be close. It's closer than Saturn.
right. If you have other suggestions as to how we can,
1 mile.
I don't know if we want, I would defer to the ag folks and to the author there.
Well, I would, and the author
1
would
mile.
defer to the commissioner, but I think the concern when we were working on language is it's difficult to set a hard and fast rule in every case. There are some situations where 1,000 feet may not really be reasonable to extend it, but there are other situations where it might be if it was downgrade or based on the severity of the violation. So we did leave it admittedly somewhat vague. I would tend to agree, even though I have no objection to the amendment. I don't know that close geographic proximity adds a whole lot, but it does emphasize the point for someone construing this, I think. And it's consistent with my intention in offering the bill, so that's why I don't object to the amendment.
Close is undefined. May touch it.
Well, I didn't want to use adjacent because there are times when adjacent may be too restrictive.
Okay. Any other discussion on this amendment? Any other questions? All right, we have,
I'm ready to go to another area of the amendment.
okay,
Not
okay,
close.
okay,
Okay.
okay. Yes, sir. Go ahead, Senator. Number 5.
Senator, your amendment speaks to a respect to such site. So you're looking at a specific site, is that correct?
That's correct.
So Site A should not negatively impact operations on Site B?
So the issue that was brought to me, and it was something that was actually caught by the department, is that the way the bill is written right now, it could be interpreted to not just affect the certain site that we're focusing on, it could affect the whole state. And so by adding the amendment to specify that it has to be connected to that site, kind of clears the language and narrows it down. Yeah.
Follow up if I could. I think I share some of Chairman Walker's concerns where we might have a bad actor who might have issues with more than one site. So Site A has an issue, Site B has an issue, but Site C has no issue. So my question is, at what point in time does the department have the discretion to say, just hold off, let's get things straightened out before we do additional amendments, sole amendments to any site? What is, when I limit it to one site, my concern is what if there's a second site or a third site or a fourth site?
And they can get another violation.
So how do I address that?
I think
I've got to, I would say I would defer to the commissioner of the department, but I am concerned that if we limit it to a site and then there are multiple sites, wherein it'd be multiple violations.
Right.
I think
But at what point in time does the commissioner have the discretion to say we've had too many violations and it's time to?
Yeah, Commissioner Harper, do you mind speaking to the senator's question?
So, Mr. Chairman, Chairman, I think that's what the importance of the language where it speaks to the geographic proximity and the operational connection. That gives us that discretion to address the issue that you raised. And so I think that's why that language is important in the underlying, even the amendment presented by Senator Hatchett, the change, even though it tailors it a little more, I think it still gives us the discretion we would need to address even the issue that you raise. That's the reason that language is important, that it be added in. That language was not in the bill as it passed the House, and because of that, it gives us the discretion to address the issue that you raised when there may be more than one particular site. Does that make sense?
I appreciate that, thank you. I'm just concerned that if we have multiple violations, we have to treat them one at a time. So is there a potential need to say, once you have some small number of violations, let's say 3, then you get a more restrictive cease and desist order until those are corrected?
And tell me if I'm wrong, Commissioner, but you spoke earlier, you feel like you've already got the tool when it comes to those.
I do think, to your point, if there are multiple violations, going back to what we discussed earlier, obviously we would use a more restrictive penalty, such as pull and registration of sole amendments or other enforcement actions that we may deem necessary because of the egregiousness of, or repeated violations, that's right. And we do that in every instance. I can, we whether it's repeated violations of the Pesticide Act or repeated violations of the Pest Control Act, or I can go on and list those out, because we, obviously at the agency, we keep a record of those violations of those entities that violate our rules, regs, or the statute, either federal law or state law. And so in this instance, we would use that same purview of responsibility and that we have as an agency to ensure that they are being addressed as best as possible. So if there are multiple violations, we would have the ability to address that.
Follow up, I apologize, but I just want to understand, if you have multiple violations of the application of pesticides, and then you handle that by you handle that by statute, or do you handle that by rule? How do you?
A little of both.
A little of both.
So the statute lays out what the penalties are, right? For all practical purposes, and then by rule and reg, we determine what the processes are that you have to meet to apply or execute what you're doing in your job, whatever license you have from us as an agency. And so if you violate those rules or regs or what's laid out, if you violate that, then we go back to the statute to determine what the penalty is. So whether it's a $1,000 fine, whether it's administrative action that the law gives us the authority to do via our rules and regs. So it's a little more difficult to answer that, but it depends on the violation, number one, as to whether or not what penalty is utilized. And that penalty, as I said, could either be laid out in statute or otherwise, and so it really depends. I hate to say that.
And I appreciate that. I still have concerns about an egregious violation, and we only address the site, the single site or the second site or the third site. At what point in time do you say you need to cease operations until you're in full compliance?
I think that would be, obviously the same way we deal with other egregious violations of any other provisions that we oversee. If we see consistent violations or consistent egregious actions, at that point we would take stricter or harsher penalty action, which could include pulling registrations, enacting criminal penalties, enacting administrative penalties, restricting their ability to apply those particular sole amendments in certain areas. So I mean, it depends, because every situation is different, correct? And I think every situation has to be dealt with differently. But I believe we have the tools in the toolbox that will allow us to help address that.
Every situation is different, but when you see repeated violations
Yep.
in an egregious manner by the same applicator, that raises the flag that says something's wrong.
Yes, sir. Understood. And is when we would take the appropriate action as the agency to ensure that that's addressed.
And you do not feel it needs to be codified?
I believe.
You've lost your.
No. Okay. Yeah. I was making sure I was going to say that correctly. No, I do not believe it needs to be codified. I believe through rule and reg we have some leeway in there as well to address that.
All right, good deal. All righty, we have an amendment to vote on.
And one final question. The amendment, does that give you 2 more tools for your toolbox?
I think the amendment clarifies the underlying intent of the legislation, And so we are, as a department, we're okay with the amendment. We're good with the amendment.
All righty.
Mr. Chairman, I still have a problem with the word close, because it's not defined. And, close. How would you define close?
Well, Mr. Chairman, I would also argue, how would you define geographic proximity?
I agree.
But the way this is written, it gives the agency the discretion to address that, and that's obviously something we could even address through rule and reg as well.
Is there a tool
That's,
to measure
oh,
close?
I'm Senator. Is there a what now?
Tool.
Oh, yeah, that's what we need.
Yardstick.
All righty, y'all, we have exhausted this for a while now. We have an amendment on the floor to vote on. All those in favor of Senator Hatchett's amendment, please signify by raising your hand. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. All right, we have 7 yeses. All those opposed? So you getting that down, Rachel? Okay. All right, the amendment passes. Majority Leader, I think you wanted to make a comment?
Yeah, if you'll allow me. Thank you. It's good to sit here and listen to this conversation. I want to thank all of you for your work. It sounds like you've come to a compromise on this important piece of legislation. I would remind us all that we have a lot of industries around our state that depend heavily on the ability to dispose of this waste. If you completely close it down, you're going to impact many, many, many industries and thousands of jobs. I was thinking about the question that Senator Burns had about proximity and close, and the two analogies came up. One was the outhouse. If you had an outhouse, you'd want to have it close enough to your home, but not too far away. So the other analogy is sort of like farmers. When you have a bunch of cattle, you have paddocks. And if you were going to have a problem in one paddock, you wanted to close that one paddock down, but you wouldn't want to shut the entire farm down, or you'd put that farmer out of business pretty quick. Some of these operations that I'm familiar with, some of these issues are out of their control. And when I say out of their control, you take a Sunday afternoon when you've had a operator distributing, land applying, subsurface injecting, whatever the application may be, they may have applied 100,000 gallons of that waste the week before. You get a 5-inch rain on a Sunday afternoon and you're going to have a washout, just like you would on a development site. Things like that do occur. EPD has a lot of discretion, but they have a lot of enforcement powers as well. And if you don't comply with their rules and regulations, and I believe this is true with the Department of Agriculture as well, it can lead up to many, many violations, many, many citations, and it can lead all the way up to a consent order, which you'll end up finding yourself in a courtroom with the Attorney General's office facing you for not complying with their orders. So I believe the tools are in the toolbox, but I think this gives you some belts and suspenders as well. And I think the Commissioner, little Casey Dutton here, has a lot of discretion, but I think he can take care of our needs without having to codify every scenario, because we'll never be able to put out every small fire that pops up. But the big fires we can put out, and I think that's what you're doing here. So thank you for what you're doing.
All right, thank you, Mr. Leader. All righty, we have one more bill to hear, and we have the room for 15 more minutes.
I think you better have a motion.
No, I know that. I know. I'm just golly.
You ready to move?
No, so now we have to vote on the underlying bill as amended. So all those in favor, raise your hand. All right, all opposed? All right, I believe the motion passes unanimously.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Member.
Chairman Leverett, have you talked to anyone about who's going to carry the bill?
I was gonna have a great senator from the great state of Georgia, Catherine.
Okay, good deal. Good deal. All right.
Thank you very much, and my apologies to my fellow Representative Chaz Cannon.
All right, thank you, Chairman. All right.
What's that?
He described the word great.
Representative Cannon, we've got the room for 10 minutes. I think you've got a simple bill, so.
Let's hope.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I too have a sole amendment bill to present to y'all today.
We're delighted to have you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, and Representative Chaz Cannon. I'm a freshman, so I replaced Senator Watson. I'm from Moultrie, and Senator succeeded Senator Watson. And you heard from Rep. Corbett today. He told me that when I succeeded Sam and Sam went to the Senate, the IQ in both chambers went up. So. Mr. Chairman, I bring to you House Bill 1237 LC 442692. This is a Department of Ag requested bill. It's a cleanup bill for the Citrus Commodity Commission, which we established last year. In the original bill, it defined a citrus producer as someone, quote, that owns or operates at least 5 acres of citrus fruit-bearing trees. Soon after the Commodity Commission was formed, they determined that it'd be a little bit easier for them to quantify tonnage or weight as opposed to production acreage. So what this bill does is simply remove the definition of what a citrus producer is under the commodity title, which is where it was defined by acreage. And this will give some flexibility to the Commodity Commission to spell out definitions of what is required to be a citrus producer in the marketing order rather than in the state code. And this is similar to how the Blueberry Commodity Commission does their marketing order. So overall, a cleanup bill. It does add some clarity and some flexibility. It's something that supports a growing industry in our state. That's the purpose of the bill, and I'll just kind of read off for an example. I have the Blueberry marketing order here. It spells out, this order shall apply to all producers of blueberries within this state that produce 2,000 pounds, parentheses, 1 ton of more blueberries that are commercially packed and marketed annually. So that's kind of how they want to do it. And this bill reflects that same intent.
Good deal. Do we have any questions from the bill's author? Senator Hatchett.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Number 2? Number one.
Representative Cannon, isn't it true that last year, your very first bill had something, I think it may have amended this law, and now you're coming back and you're changing the very first piece of legislation that you ever passed in the House?
That is correct.
Did you get it right this time?
That is correct. I think we got it right. No sole amendments on this bill. I
All
promise.
right. Any further? Senator Watson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think I'm somewhat supposed to be mentoring Representative Cannon.
That explains it.
Yes. So I have a extra key made for his office so that he can take with him today and he won't get locked out of his office anymore.
All right, good deal. All right, if we have no further questions, what's the will of the committee?
Motion
All right, was it Senator Summers? All right, Senator Summers, motion do pass. Second, Senator Watson. All in favor, please signify by raising your right hand. All opposed? All right, good deal. Representative Cannon, who are you going to get to carry your bill?
I asked my good friend and classmate, Senator Watson, to carry the bill.
All right, good deal, good deal. We have one more piece of business, if y'all don't mind, before we leave. We've got just a few minutes to do it. The Agricultural Commodity Commission's ex officio appointment, that is up, and it's, I don't know if some of y'all know Russ Moon. Russ has let us know that he would like to be reappointed. Surely you know Russ. He's a great American. Yeah, but anyway.
You need a motion?
Yeah, well, I do.
I make a motion, Russ.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second? We have a second. Do we have any other nominations that, all right, okay. Well, we have a motion, a second. All in favor of reappointing Russ Moon, signify by raising your right hand. All opposed? All right, Russ Moon's reappointed. Thank you all for your time today. This meeting's adjourned.